Alright, so today what we're going to do is we're going to recreate famously crashed supercars or hypercars. Now the thing is, not only are we going to recreate these cars, we're also going to tell the stories of these cars that has been crashed by the owners or by people who work at the dealerships. Now, the only difference is we're not going to do challenges, we're just going to tell you the stories. And you guys might want to stick towards the end because we've got some interesting stories for you. So I'm joined with PK442Y, YT, or Patrick, or Patrice, as everyone would call him. But yeah, so what I want you, we're going to be in 5 different cars, him and I, and we're going to tell the backstories of these cars. So Pat, you ready?
Yep.
Alright, perfect. Let's get into our first batch of cars. Alright. Now we're in our 2 cars. He's in a Ferrari Enzo, and I'm inside a red LaFerrari. So, yeah. Here, follow me, Pat.
Yep.
Now, the interesting story about my Ferrari is that just recently, I don't know when it was, but a few days ago, there was a picture of a LaFerrari that got crashed somewhere in Brunei. And this is where I'm going to start, is... that LaFerrari was owned by the Sultan of Brunei, and the one driving it that crashed it was the nephew of that Sultan of Brunei. Now, the thing is, it shouldn't be a problem with them, because they probably have like 74 LaFerraris anyways, because, you know, the Sultan of Brunei and all them, they have a really big collection. So, yeah. There's not really much information on who crashed into who, but from the looks of the pictures, as you can see here, it is, it's pretty bad, but I'm pretty sure it's rebuildable. But, yeah, that's a short story of mine, and I'm sorry it was so short, but, you know, that was the most recent one, and it was a famous crash, because it blew up all over Instagram, basically. So, tell us about your story, about your, carbon Enzo there.
Yeah, this is no short story. This isn't something you can, like, tell in a jiffy. This is more a campfire story, not an urban legend. This all happened. Enzo, owned by a Swedish career criminal, split in half in California and ended up causing a massive police investigation just from this crash alone. So, this car was owned by a Swedish career criminal named Stefan Eriksson. In the 90s, he was the head of a criminal group called the Uppsala Mafia.
Oh, shit.
He has served several jail sentences throughout his life for various reasons, including a 10-year sentence, even though he only served half, like the little slimy bastard he is. He broke into a man's home, threatened to slit his throat, and ended up shoving a gun down his throat. The only reason they proved it is because the man who had the gun shoved down his throat survived 2 bomb attacks afterwards.
Jesus Christ.
And in the early 2000s, Stefan was heavily involved in a UK-based company called Gizmondo, which was essentially a PlayStation/Nintendo competitor, even though it was a complete and utter sham. And it was under hot water due to many, many lawsuits, so he does what every career criminal does, goes to California. And he lived a pretty interesting life there. Bought an Enzo. And on February 21st, 2006, he was racing his Enzo and his SLR on the Pacific Coast Highway. And he may or may not have spun off at a speed around 162 miles an hour and hit a pole. Split the car in half instantly. The engine went 1,200 feet away from the crash, and everybody thought that it was just a normal billionaire or millionaire just enjoying a nice day, crashing his Enzo before rush hour and completely shutting down PCH because of it. But a month later, his fiancée was pulled over in that SLR because the officer thought that the European plates were somewhat suspicious. Turns out they were, and he found that the car was illegally imported from the UK, as well as 5 other cars, including that Enzo, which were leased, and the lease payments haven't been made. And the fiance, who was pretty damn scared, and she didn't know. All she knew is that she didn't have a license and was driving an SLR around Beverly Hills. But she ended up giving all this information to the cops about illegally impounded cars and all that. And after the investigation, after finding all that information, Stefan was charged with embezzlement, grand theft auto, driving under the influence, coke possession, hit and run, and weapons charges. And
my God.
As for the Enzo, it was shipped back to Maranello, somehow fixed. Somehow they found a way to bolt it back together. It's Ferrari mechanics or something else. And it sold for $1.7 million at RM Sotheby's in Paris in, I believe, 2016. I can't remember exactly. But when the car was crashed, it was in typical Ferrari resale red, Rosso Corsa. But now it is finished in a one-off, naked carbon fiber paint job. Currently resides in Europe, and the owner loves it. And it's as if nothing ever happened. And since Stefan originally bought the car, it had done 1,700 miles to this day.
Holy crap. Dude, my story was just a simple, oh yeah, Sultan of Brunei's nephew just crashed a LaFerrari, but yours is a whole story behind that car.
It's literally something out of GTA.
That is literally something out of GTA. Holy
Except you couldn't
crap.
call Moore's Mutual.
Alright, off to the next cars. Now we're in our second group of cars, and it's the McLaren F1s. Now, some of you may know, or, you know, about the Rowan Atkinson story with his F1. Now, rumors say that he's crashed it twice, and it shouldn't be a rumor, it is true. He crashed his McLaren F1 twice. The first incident was in 1999. He damaged the hood by driving it into the back of a Rover Metro. Imagine the insurance just going, "You hit what?" after he smashed into the Rover Metro. But after he did that, a few years later, in 2011, he did it again. Instead of smashing into a Rover Metro, he smashed it into a tree, which was
Nice job.
yeah, I know. He his company wasn't his insurance company wasn't happy, so they basically left him, and yeah, Rowan had to pay a $1.4 million repair bill from McLaren to fix his McLaren F1, and yeah. So after he fixed it, he kept it for 2 years, and then he sold it into auction for $12 million. Just imagine that. A car that crashed twice did not lose its value. $12 million. That's insane. So yeah, that's the story of my Rowan Atkinson F1, which is one of my favorite stories when it comes to McLarens, because I just find it funny, because he's Mr. Bean, you know? He's one of my favorite actors because of Mr. Bean. But yeah, what's your story, Patrick?
Let me put it to you this way. The year is 1999. You're a 28-year-old multimillionaire after selling your first company for $300 million. You're a web designer, and you took $22 million from that sale, legally. Now, to reward yourself, the day you sell your company, you go out and buy a $1 million McLaren F1. You're 28 years old, and you're driving around in a McLaren F1, which at the time was the fastest car in the world. So what do you do with the McLaren F1 at 28 years old? Do you garage it? Do you go and flex with it? No. You daily drive it, and you put 11,000 miles on it in the first year of ownership.
Oh my god, that's
Now,
one hell of an owner.
Somebody did do all of this. Unfortunately, they decided to do it uninsured. An uninsured F1 driven by a 28-year-old multimillionaire.
Ouch.
Now, one morning, this owner was driving it to a meeting for funding for his new startup. His passenger asked, "What can this thing do?" And he said the two most infamous words while driving a car: "Watch this." And then he gave it a bootful. Now, the McLaren F1, as we know, it's not a slow car. It's also not a car with much technology in it. Doesn't do much to, say, assist you in the driving experience. It's just you, the car, and the road. And 627 horsepower. And no traction control.
Oh,
And
boy.
this 28-year-old, he, and I quote, didn't really know how to drive. And yeah, he decided to give it a bootful.
Okay.
He drove it off the road into a ditch. Car flew 3 feet up into the air. Did a couple of spins in a very exuberant way.
Of course, this is a McLaren
And
F1.
that was that. Except it wasn't that. He fixed the car somehow, some way, and he eventually sold it in 2007, presumably for a hefty profit. Now, the only reason he did sell it was because of his reputation, not because of the crash, but it was because of his new startup. It was completely going against what he now believed. His new startup was called Tesla. Yes, Elon Musk did own and crashed an uninsured F1.
Dude, I love both of the stories. I love it because mine was just Mr. Bean, who drove a Mini Cooper, the green one. Drove the real life actor Rowan Atkinson drove the F1 and crashed it twice. Meanwhile, Elon Musk. That's really funny because both are similar stories. One way or another, these two cars ended up in the ditch.
And one way or another ended up working.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And are now two of the most famous McLaren F1s in the world.
Aside from the Sultan of Brunei's collection, of course.
Yeah.
Alright, the
That's
way
true.
they did it. Let's rip it. Oh, I've crashed! I've crashed! We now have our third car. I've got my CCX, and he's got his Bugatti Veyron Super Sport. Just pretend that's a 16.4, and the story will make sense. So, you take the lead, and you can tell the story about your Bugatti.
Okay, so this is a pretty famous Veyron, or it's based on a pretty famous Veyron. Everybody's seen the YouTube video where a Veyron, for whatever reason, veers off the road and into what seemed to be a lake. Now, there is a story behind this. It wasn't just a driver on drugs. Wink.
Wink.
So in October 2009, the owner crashed this beautiful, beautiful Veyron into the Galveston Bay in Texas. Now, what's interesting about the Galveston Bay is that it's full of salt water. Now, this isn't relevant now, but it will be later. Now, the owner did leave their car running, which
You have arrived at your
was very
destination.
suspicious to authorities. He claimed that he wanted to avoid a low-flying pelican, and that was the reason why he veered off the road. But the video, as everybody has seen, proved that there was no pelican. So what could it be? Could it be alcohol? Cocaine? No. Insurance fraud. The owner wanted the car to be completely totaled so his insurance company could pay him the full price, if not more. The Veyron, as of right now, is in 1 million pieces in a warehouse, presumably in Texas. And the fate of this car could be up to you viewers. We have no idea what this car's future looks like. It could be used as a nice piece to put on a wall, or it could be a fully running car. Only time will tell.
Only time will tell indeed. Alright, so I'm pretty sure some of you have already picked apart the looks of my CCX. And if you have, and you know about the story of this car, you're right. It is the CCX that crashed in Mexico. So this CCX started its life in Texas, when it was basically for sale there, listed for $1.25 million.
It's a dealership called Crave Luxury Auto, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I think so, maybe.
So I remember seeing it.
But yeah,
For
it was listed, and an anonymous buyer from Mexico bought it. Now, this car was heading into Monterey, and the owner lost control, hit a curb, and it basically was in 1 million pieces after that. The good thing is the owner and the passenger was okay. But if you look at this picture, you kind of question, how did they survive that? And it's a good thing that they survived, but like, at least you know you're going to survive in a Koenigsegg. It flipped multiple times, and both passenger and driver, they were survived, like I said. But the most interesting part was both worked for the government. They were sent to a local hospital, and then they were moved to the Mexico City hospital via private jet, police escort, and had civil protection. That's where it gets very interesting. The car was uninsured. And again, like I said, it was worth $1.25 million. The question is, why were they in civil protection? Why were they moved? And who bought the car? That's the most interesting one. See, no one knows a lot about this car. I don't even know where it is. Is it salvageable? I don't think so. It's in million pieces, as you can see in this picture. It is insane of how those two made it out alive. They were discharged a few hours later when they got moved to Mexico City Hospital. My question is, who bought the car? Why were they moved out of the hospital so quickly? And why were they transferred via private jet with civil protection? Tell us in the comments down below of what you think about this little conspiracy of this Koenigsegg CCX, and where you guys think it will be. And if you guys have further information, please let us know, because I really want to know what happened to this car. Next cars are going to be extremely interesting and has a hell of a story. Alright, we're now at group number 4. We've got the Gambella Mirage GT and a Murcielago SV. Alright, you can take the lead. You can tell the story about that one too.
Okay, this was owned by a very, very careful owner, as you know, as you may recognize. Both of these cars, in fact, were owned by the same owner, who was very careful with his cars, and he really did care for them. Like, he really put in a lot of effort to make sure that they were always in, tip-top shape, and that he didn't drive them on days. This man's name was Ben Chen, and he was very careful. But unfortunately, fate just, wasn't... His vibe just was a bit off one day, as he crashed this beautiful manual Murcielago SV. One of three in the US, all of which are white, but also reported to be one of 6 in the world in manual SV, and that's according to Ed Bolian of VinWiki, who, as we know, is the Murcielago god. Ben Chen, on this day, wasn't very happy. He was kicked out of a car meet, which, let's just say, isn't unusual for him. Maybe for being too careful with his cars. And, he wanted to look cool after his ego was tarnished in front of the crowd. So he sped off in his beautiful Murcielago SV. But unfortunately, according to him, he hit a curb. According to him, which, if you look at the pictures of the damage,
here's the picture. Look at it.
There's no freaking way it had only a curb. It looks like it hit the back of a school bus. But somehow, some way, the car was rebuilt. Paulner, was he very careful about your car?
Oh yeah, he was so good. So as Patrick said, this car is also owned by Benjamin Chen, or BC on Instagram, if you guys want to know who he is. He also is was the co-owner of Gold Rush Rally. I'm pretty sure everyone knows how he crashed this Carrera GT already. It's number 729 of the Carrera GT lineup, and it is unsure which number this is in the Gambella lineup, but I know there's only 25 Gambellas, and there's only 2 in the USA. Benjamin Chen did a hit and run inside his 1 of 25 Gambella Mirage GT, or, like I said, 1 of 2 in North America. Ben managed to hit 5 cars. He went on a rampage, he slammed into a Toyota Sienna, drove away, slammed into a few more other cars, before getting arrested by the cops for driving under the influence. He was under the influence of coke, and I cannot say the drug, but he was under influence that drug. And yeah, so this is not his first time or second time crashing a car. We'll get onto the third crash later on, but he is very well known for taking care of his cars. He's known for that. He likes to take care of his cars, and to show how much he likes to take care of cars, he also scratched the living crap out of his CLK GTR Super Sport, which is one of 2 in the world. And he also managed to get kicked out of his own rally, the Gold Rush Rally, back in 2018, I think, for driving his CLK GTR the wrong way because he was late to the grid. Oh, good old Benjamin Chen. So, yeah, that's the story of these two cars, sadly enough. And we can move on to the next cars. Alright, we are now on our 5th and final group of cars to tell stories about. Patrick, do you want to take it off?
Sure, I'll take it off.
Go
So
ahead.
this is a McLaren 12C Spider. It was a rental on Gold Rush Rally in, I believe, 2013. And it was driven by Sino Chen. Now, Chen on Gold Rush Rally. Now, there's no confirmation of this, but we suspect that it is a relative of Ben Chen. Now,
Because
if anybody has
Ben was
information
spotted driving the MP4.
confirming or denying this, please let us know, because we don't want to be making false statements. So that's why we are saying allegedly. Now,
Because all I know is Ben Chen was driving that MP4 too in the rally. So,
yeah, just not at the time of the incident. Now, a truck veered in front of Sino. I'm so sorry to anybody that this offends. But the truck veered in front of him, and he tried to avoid it. Unfortunately, he was going at tremendously high speed. Nobody knows how fast he was going at the time. And when the truck veered in front, he ended up spinning off the road. Tried to correct it, but it didn't end up well for him, as it ended up in a discount storage somewhere in the middle of Texas.
I wonder where that car is now. But yeah.
Yeah.
So to top off that, I have a Range Rover SVR driven by Tanner Fox and a model and his friend. I do not know their names. I think it was one of them was like Chances or something like that. But yeah.
clue.
So Tanner Fox was originally going to get a McLaren, but then they switched over to a Raptor, but then the Raptor couldn't come, so they switched over to the SVR. And yeah, they took part in the 2019 rally, I think, or 2019 or 2018 rally of Gumball 3000. And basically, in the first 2 hours, Tanner took over to drive, and he was taking a really, really sharp right turn to get gas, and thought a patch of grass was solid. Little did he know, it was illusion, and it was a straight ditch down below. And as you can see from this picture, he managed to flip this over. I'm not sure if a lot of people know about this crash, because it did go under the radar, because it took him such a long time to talk about due to legal actions. But yeah, Tanner managed to flip this SVR. The model decided to not continue with the rally. Tanner decided to continue with the rally, and so did his friend. Now, I do not know what car they took after that, but I feel bad for the Range Rover. The airbags deployed, everyone was okay, thank God. But yeah, I could not find any more information about what happened to this Range Rover. So I hope it was rebuilt and then reinstated into the city, or into the roads, so it can see more day of light. So yeah. I hope you guys enjoy these the story times that we have on the history of these cars that we remade, and I hope we can do it again. Smash that like button, give us 50 likes or 40 likes, and we'll do this again with more cars, because as you know, there's a lot of cars out there that have untold stories, and we will do some research to bring you some juicy ass stories for this series, if you guys want us to make it into a series. So let us know in the comments down below about cars that we should know about, stories about for the next episode. And yeah, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and we'll see you guys later.